You know that moment. You're standing there waiting to bat. You've got pads on, gloves are on, maybe leaning on the fence watching the game unfold. And suddenly your mind starts racing. Don't get out. Watch that in-swinger. Don't do what you did last week. Don't throw your wicket away. And before you've even faced a ball, you're mentally exhausted. Or maybe you're already out at the crease. You know, you've just faced a few deliveries, you're settling in, then suddenly your head gets noisy. What if I get out here? Should I be attacking? Am I moving properly? And without even realising it, you stop batting and you start thinking about batting. And if that sounds familiar as a batsman, then this video is for you. Because today I want to explain something that affects nearly every batsman at some point. Overthinking at the crease. Why it happens, why trying harder actually makes it worse, and most importantly, how to stop it. And spoiler alert, the answer isn't concentrating harder. Now, before we go any further, if this is your first video you've seen from me, let me quickly explain something that'll make the rest of this a whole lot more sense. I teach batting mindset through something I call the inner team. There's the captain, the player, and the gatekeeper. The captain is your conscious mind. That's the voice in your head, the one that thinks, analyzes, and tries to control everything. The player is your subconscious mind. That's where your timing lives, your reactions live, and it's your natural game. It's the version of you in the nets when you're just playing, not thinking, just reacting. And then there's the gatekeeper, the creative subconscious mind. This is the part that decides what's true about you as a player, your beliefs, your identity, the stories you carry about yourself. Now, if that sounds a bit deep, stick with me, because this explains exactly why overthinking happens. Here's the first thing I want to say. Overthinking doesn't mean you're weak, and it doesn't mean you're mentally soft. In fact, most of the time, overthinking happens because you care. You want to do well. You care about your wicket, you care about your team, and you care about scoring runs. And somewhere in your mind, you're trying to protect yourself from failure. So here's what happens. The captain steps in. The captain thinks, righto, I'll take over from here. And it starts trying to help. Watch that outswing. Don't play across the line. Don't get out cheaply again. Be careful now. And here's the problem. Batting is not a thinking sport. Batting is a reacting sport. You don't have time to consciously think through every movement. Ball released, length, line, movement, decision, all in a split second. Now, the player was built for this, but when the captain starts interfering, everything slows down. And this is where it starts to feel hard. You know that feeling where suddenly batting feels like hard work, like you're trying to solve a maths equation while someone's bowling at you. That's overthinking. And the frustrating part, the harder you try, the worse it usually gets. Now, let me show you what overthinking actually looks like, because most players don't even realise they're doing it. Sometimes it starts before the innings even begins. You're waiting to bat, watching wickets fall, and your captain's already warming things up. Big innings needed here. Don't mess this up. You need runs today. You can't fail again. You haven't even faced a ball, and you're already carrying pressure. Or maybe it happens after a bad week. You got a duck last game. Now you're walking out this week thinking, just survive. Don't do that again. Don't look stupid. And notice the language. You're not trying to score anymore. You're trying not to fail. That's a huge difference. Or maybe you've actually started well. You're 25 not out, timing it nicely, looking good. Then the captain creeps in. Don't waste another start. You always throw this away. Just be careful now. And suddenly, the innings changes. You tighten up. You stop trusting yourself and you start second-guessing yourself. And now, instead of seeing the ball, you're stuck inside your own head. And believe me, this happens to the best batsmen in the world. Now, here's where things get really frustrating for batsmen. Because when someone tells you you're overthinking, what do they usually say? They say, just focus, concentrate harder, watch the ball. And look, they mean well, but nobody actually explains what that means. Because here's the truth. You can't force yourself into flow by trying harder. In fact, trying harder is often the making things worse. Now, let me explain why. Imagine driving a car. You don't consciously think, mirror, indicator, brake, hands at 10 and 2. You just drive. Now imagine trying to consciously think through every little movement while driving. You probably crash the thing. Batting is exactly the same. Your player has already been trained through repetition. You face thousands of balls, hours in the nets, years of experience. The player already knows how to react. But then pressure hits. And then the captain jumps in trying to control everything. Front foot, head still, elbow up, don't edge this. Now suddenly, you're trying to consciously control something that was designed to happen subconsciously. And the result? Half decisions, tight movement, no flow at all. That horrible feeling where batting suddenly feels hard. And this is where I want you to hear me properly. The goal is not to stop thinking. You're human. Thoughts will come. The goal is to stop listening to every thought, because not every thought deserves your attention. Just because your captain says something doesn't mean it's useful. Now that's a big shift. And if you're sitting there thinking, mate, this is exactly me, stick with me, because what I'm about to show you next might be the simplest thing you ever do for your batting. And it's something you can use in your, next game. So what do you actually do when your head gets noisy? Because telling yourself don't overthink doesn't work. That's like saying don't think pink elephants. Now all you can think about is pink elephants. You need a reset. And this is something I teach players all the time. It's simple, repeatable, practical. 3 steps. First step, notice the captain. That sounds not obvious, but most players don't. They're inside the thought. Instead of noticing the thought, big difference. So when your head gets noisy, you simply notice it. Okay, yep, my captain's getting loud here. Don't panic. Don't get frustrated. Just awareness, because awareness gives you choice. Step 2, reset physically. Walk away for a moment. Look at the side screen, look at the trees in the distance, tap the bat, take a slow breath. Not because breathing magically fixes everything, does come close though, but because physical resets calm mental noise. Simple things matter under pressure. Then step 3, 1 cue only, not 5 thoughts, 1. Maybe for you it's watch, react, play late, trust, whatever works for you. Mine was concentrate. I had it written down the back of my bat. But 1 cue only, because you can't bat with 5 thoughts running around in your head, but you can bat with 1 clear intention. And here's what happens. The captain settles down, the player gets space again, and suddenly you stop trying to control batting and you start batting again. Now, will this magically fix everything overnight? No, because overthinking isn't usually the problem. It's the symptom. Which brings me to the real issue, the gatekeeper. Here's something really interesting. Some players don't just overthink occasionally, they expect to overthink. And this is where the gatekeeper comes in. Remember, the gatekeeper decides what feels true about you. And over time, you can unknowingly build an identity like, I'm an overthinker. I always get nervous. I struggle under pressure. I'm not mentally strong. Now here's the problem. If that identity sits in the gatekeeper, guess what happens every game? Your mind starts looking for proof. So before the innings even begins, the gatekeeper says through the captain, here we go again. Then the captain starts talking. And suddenly, the same movie starts playing again. Not because you're weak, not because you can't bat, because the pattern feels familiar. And familiar feels safe to the mind. This is why 1 good innings usually doesn't fix confidence, because the gatekeeper says, yeah, hey, nice innings, but let's see how you can do it again. Real change happens when the identity shifts, not once, but repeatedly. And this is why putting in the work really matters. Now imagine the opposite for a second. You walk out to bat, same situation, same bowler, same pressure, but this time your head is quieter. You're not trying to survive, you're just present. You trust what you've trained. You react. You move naturally. You stop trying to force an innings and instead you let it unfold. And here's the crazy thing. That version of you already exists. You felt it before, maybe in the nets, maybe in one of your best innings. The goal isn't creating a new player. The goal is getting out of your own way enough to let that player show up more often. And this is where everything comes together. Your belief shapes your identity. Your identity shapes your behaviour, and your behaviour creates your results. And your results go right back in a loop and reinforce your belief. So if the belief is, I always overthink, every innings becomes evidence. But if you start shifting that belief, you start interrupting the pattern. And eventually, the whole thing starts working for you instead of against you. Now, hopefully you can see overthinking isn't random. And it's definitely not because there's something wrong with you. There's a reason it happens. And more importantly, there's a way through it. Everything I've talked about in this video, the captain, the player, the gatekeeper, identity, overthinking, confidence, it's all broken down properly in my book, The Century Within. So if you're someone sitting there thinking, this explains exactly what's been happening to me, that's a really good place to go deeper. But if you're thinking, I don't just want to understand this, I actually want to fix it, then let me ask you 3 honest questions. First, do you believe overthinking is holding your batting back? Second, do you think having someone guide you through this, would speed that up? And thirdly, are you actually ready to take this seriously and not just watch another video? So if the answer is no to any of those, that's fine, not a problem. But if it's yes to all 3, then I'd encourage you to apply to work with me. And we'll see if you're a good fit for one another for the Century Club. Link to my website is below in the description. Because the moment you stop trying to control every ball is usually the moment you start trusting your game again. So until next time, bye for now.